He called me about 20 years ago. It was 2004, roughly. And he was just sort of asking a question. He said, I've had parents come into my office and they're concerned about this ethyl mercury containing preservative thimerosal that's in vaccines. They're worried. They're worried about injecting their children with mercury. What can you tell me? So this was 2004. Now, we had taken thimerosal out of vaccines given to young children, at least children less than 4, by 2001. Western Europe had taken thimerosal out of vaccines in the early 90s. There were Canadian provinces that used thimerosal containing vaccines right next to Canadian provinces that used the same vaccines that didn't contain thimerosal. So it was really easy to do these studies. I mean, there were a lot of natural studies out there to do. There were at least a handful, 5 studies or so, that by the time he called me, we had. So I thought, okay, I'll explain these studies. And so I went through the studies and he was very receptive and thankful. And I thought, I went home to that night to my wife and I said, I had a really good conversation with RFK Jr. today. It was great. You know, we're going to be tossing the football around at Hyannisport pretty soon. No, I'm just kidding. But, you know, in any case, I thought it was a good conversation. And then months later, in like July 2005, he published an article in Deadly Immunity, which basically showed me that he sandbagged me. He said that, you know, that he had talked to me and that I lied and that he knows I lied. And that the only reason that I said that thimerosal in vaccines was safe because I was working on a vaccine. This was 2005, so it was before our rotavirus vaccine had come out yet, which wasn't until 2006. He said that it was the only reason I said that was that our vaccine was laced with thimerosal. So I called Rolling Stone and I said, you know, it's first of all, no live attenuated viral vaccine contains a preservative, so this is just wrong. And the numbers that he gave were off by a factor of sometimes of more than 180 in terms of the amount of thimerosal that was in vaccines, but really wasn't in vaccines anymore. And you know, they listened to me and eventually they did retract the article. And Salon also, it was published and they retracted. But it was my first exposure to someone who was willing to just utterly sandbag me. And then ever since then, the guy hates me. I mean, he speaks in front of large groups and he often will mention my name and he'll say that I lied and he knows I lied because he recorded the conversation.
I caught him in a lie and both of us knew that he was lying and that both of us recognized that he was lying.
So I put a Substack out not too long ago where I said, great, release the tape. If you recorded that conversation, let's hear it because that's not the way I remember that conversation. He doesn't like me much. He is not the person to head the nation's largest public health agency. He's a science denialist. He's an anti-vaccine activist. He's a conspiracy theorist. He spent 20 years downgrading vaccines.